paranormal side of the Amityville Horror Story in 2020. Of all the paranormal and horror stories that we hear of in the world today, the Amityville Horror Story is one of the most bizarre and disturbing incidents to occur in American history, spawning over 2 films and a book based on these real-life events, after 2 families were deeply affected by the inexplicable actions of Ronald D. Fear Jr. in 1974. It was only a year later that the Amityville house was put up for sale again, where it was purchased by the Lutz family for $80,000 despite the property's horrible backstory. Feeling as if the price range made the home a steal for the amenities the colonial-based house provided, while also disconnecting history and home, never expecting to experience what had transpired when they finally moved in, which became the story that gave rise to the films and book written by Jansen simply titled The Amityville Horror. Based on hauntings that first began with what was described as a bad personality change of the father and husband George Lutz, followed by the fact that he would awaken at 3:15 a.m. every night, which was the very time frame the DeFear incident took place. One night while outside, George witnesses something that would chill anyone to their bones, as his daughter was seen standing in her window with an outline of a pig-faced being standing behind her. Believing she was in trouble, he had run back in the home to help her, only to find her sound asleep. One would think it was probably delusions brought about the lack of sleep he was experiencing in the home, until his daughter mentioned having a new imaginary friend named Jody that was described as having a pig face. The following experience that would haunt him is witnessing his wife age as if she were 90 years old, while looking down at her sleeping in bed. While Kathy may have not experienced this firsthand, it was revealed that even her own mother witnessed this effect on her when visiting, describing her as being a whole other person when it happened, validating another experience that could have been chalked up to a bad case of insomnia, as Georgia would lose sleep after awakening to the 3 a.m. time zone every night they were there. Other typical supernatural experiences would then occur in the home, like doors opening, closing, and being ripped off the hinges. But it gets crazier, like finding a room full of flies while cold outside, clothed footprints outside the home, and even unexplained oozing on the walls around them. They had even come to find a hidden red-painted room in the basement of the home that was not included in the house's design, only large enough to fit 2 people close together, which also possessed a bad odor. To make matters worse, the family dog would not dare enter that area despite influence, which was against the usual behaviors of their pup. Another night incident found George awakening to the sound of a band playing downstairs from his room. When checking to see what it was, he found furniture had been moved, and the rug rolled up as if space were needed for a performance. It was then when the family decided to bring in a priest to survey the home for any problems. To their surprise, the priest verified experiences during his visit to the house, both physically and visually. In the book, it is described as feeling flu-like symptoms when interacting with the family, and a moment where he hears a voice yelling for him to get out. It will be this third-party encounter that would inspire the author to write the Amityville horror book. It only took 28 days for the Lutz family to finally call it quits on the home and abandon it entirely, leaving all their belongings, as if to disattach themselves entirely from the experience, as the previous night was too scary for them to endure any more paranormal encounters. So, The next morning they finally gave in and fled the area, never to return, leaving their personal items to be auctioned off when the home will be placed on the market again, which George described as something they would never know what they would leave behind, they would never see again in an interview. When the book was finally released in 1977, people questioned the book's authenticity, feeling as if there were too many coincidences between the parallels of things happening with families economically, media of the time, and the family in the story. However, it seemed it was just chalked up to the writer wanting the story to be more modernized for readers' sake, as modern tropes of hauntings and entertainment were popular at the time, allowing it to be the perfect time for it to become as popular as it did. Imagine that there were some bizarre incidents that even took place with this side of the story, as weird experiences outside of the home happened involving manuscripts and early readers of the book. Strange experiences that happened to the families of these readers, and a fire that broke out in a car carrying the manuscript to a publisher. Another case involved a car possessing a copy of the manuscript that was found completely dry in the trunk, after the car was completely consumed in water, followed by a few more unfortunate things that happened to people while in possession of this. Feel free to take your research even further to see what you find, or watch the films, as they are said to be very in tune with the actual Amityville horror events that took place. However, there are iterations that explain the paranormal involvement of these incidents in their own unique perspective for the sake of viewer experience, like saying the house itself was the actual entity that caused these horrible things to happen, which could be the furthest thing from the truth, as these experiences have apparently seemed to stop with the Lutz family, as the home on Ocean Avenue in New York was owned by 4 different families peacefully since that story, with the last sale being in 2017, at the price range of $605K, down from the previous value of $950K in 2010, which makes the paranormal encounters of the Lutz family questionable, unless there was perhaps something in the home itself that was cursed and sent away at auction without the knowledge of the sellers. Something that is common in the paranormal sense, as there are many stories that tackle the premise of cursed or spiritually attached objects. There is also the famous photo of the ghost child, taken in the Amityville house. Photography that was analyzed and verified by professionals as being authentic, and potentially the closest thing to an actual spirit caught on camera. In 2020, it appears that the paranormal side of this story had been debunked, as if it had never happened. But what do you believe?